Okay, welcome. This is a conversation about the Anywhere Workspace. I'm Greg Armanini, Director of Product Management with VMware. I'm here with Steve Desaw. He is Principal Architect for Sales, and Rusty Birchfield, who is the Head of Security at DoorDash. Today, we're going to talk about what is an Anywhere Workspace. We want to get everybody on the same page about where things are going. We're going to talk also about the VMware and Okta integrations, and then we're going to have a discussion with Rusty about his experiences. So, getting into it, so first and foremost, I don't think it's a secret to anyone that we are living in a remote first world. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the punchline is that today it's no longer a perk, it's a prereq. And doing it well is really critical. So, both from a security standpoint, as well as, and perhaps most importantly, from a user experience standpoint. We're hearing more and more from our customers that as we move to remote first, the Anywhere Workspace really needs to address user experiences. And that's going to be a core tenet of today's conversation that we'll be talking about. Now, of course, backing all of this, there's the Workspace One Platform. And there's a lot to it and some new components as well. What I will say just at the high level is that there's three major um, uh, go-to-markets that we're supporting. So one is IT modernization. Many of you will think about that as UEM. And access, the service that we represent, plays a major part in underpinning that. There's, of course, employee engagement. That's the user experience. And this is employee lifecycle management and catalogs and workflows. And we'll get into those details. And access also plays a critical role there. And now there's an emerging conversation as well around zero trust. And this is going to be a broad initiative across VMware that we'll touch on. Of course, it goes without saying that we have core services that enable all of these go-to-markets. So device management, app management, access, of course, and identity, as well as endpoint security. And looking at the details, I just want to talk a little bit about, access. What's its role? Access, of course, is still an identity platform. In the context with Okta, it's very often used as a broker. And here you see that it can interface with various IDPs as well as on-prem directories. And it's the linchpin that connects to both our intelligence framework, to our UEM framework, as well as our SDDC framework. And it powers, decisions for access, of course, which can either be in the positive sense, so allow or step up authentication, possibly ask the user to remediate, download an app and install it, or block access. And of course, access will get you to any public cloud application that's federated. And it also has the ability to get you to virtual as well as internal applications and services. That can either be on its own through like identity bridging, and it can work with UAG and Tunnel as well as Horizon. So a really powerful overall solution that's the glue for a lot of the use cases we talk about. So looking at zero trust, so that's a really new and critical component that really, when we think about Anywhere Workspace, that is a critical component, and it involves our entire stack. So and it also involves many stakeholders from across the organizations, and we're bringing them all together over time, whether you are looking to work with the end user services teams who will use access and endpoint management. Now the networking teams will get integrated into zero trust by setting access policies within this overall framework. Cloud ops teams get involved because we have SASE type use cases where those become part of the solution stack. And of course, bringing in the security teams as a first-class citizen in this sort of ecosystem becomes really critical. From a what is it standpoint, we also think about analytics end to end and orchestration end to end. So when we look at the total zero trust platform, it's going to reach across VMware and touch all of the core services to provide a very seamless and powerful zero trust solution. From a feature standpoint, you can see here there's a lot of components to an identity stack that are intrinsic, whether it's FIDO2 and WebAuthn, cert management, session enforcement, integrated MFAs become a big deal here, as well as UEM features and intelligence-based features. So a lot of core identity components come into play. And when we talk about integrating with partners like Okta, there's obviously a role to play here as well. So, switching gears a little bit, we think about, our vision now is really thinking about how we secure and enable the future of anywhere work, right? And this is underpinned by all of those services. But, really there's a lot of connective tissue, right, that's making this possible. But what we want to enable is primarily on the user experience side, and we want it to be really simple. So a lot of working parts underneath, a lot of simplicity for our end user as a result. I'm going to show you a quick video. I think sometimes understanding what the workspace is a lot better said by seeing some moving pictures. So let me switch gears into that.
It's time to reimagine your physical and digital workspaces for your distributed workforces and become a resilient anywhere organization. With the Workspace One Campus app, you can customize and reserve the perfect on-site office space, take care of creature comforts, and get insights for a collaborative colleague experience. Use the Workspace One Intelligent Hub app to be productive and to receive important notifications. Workspace One helps you with all aspects of your day. It reminds you of important events, helps you present and collaborate, and even helps you order lunch for the team. But there's a whole other side to this experience. In the Workspace One Campus Admin Console, your workplace team admins can ensure workplace reservations are running smoothly. And IT admins can monitor employee experience scores on the Workspace One Management Console. We may not know exactly what tomorrow brings, but we know you will be an exceptional anywhere organization with VMware.
Okay, so you can see there's a lot going on there, but at the end of the day, underpinning so many of those use cases, whether it was the touchless use cases or users being able to get notifications, that's all underpinned by identity. So let me talk a little bit more about how you deliver a digital workspace. So the first question most people ask is, well, is that the experience for everybody? And the answer is no, right? It will vary based on what use case or what value you want to deliver. And so we think about the world from an end user perspective and what personas do we want to enable with the workspace. So it could be a classic information worker use case. When we talk to Rusty, we'll hear that most of their workers are in that camp. But we also, because we have so many large and heterogeneous customers, we have lots of frontline worker use cases as well, hourly employees, contractors, right? And they may not have the same set of devices or the same tasks that they perform on a day-to-day basis. And by and large, right, they have different high-level needs that they need to have met as a remote-first employee. Whether you're an information worker and you just want things at your fingertips and better engagement, or whether you're a frontline service worker who may be more concerned about safety and support and alerts. So we have the ability in the platform to target different use cases based on the need. Now, moreover, right, when we think about an anywhere workspace, we know that the form factors do matter as well. So everywhere from a traditional laptop to a smart device to a ruggedized device can be part of the anywhere workspace. And of course, depending on who you are, you're more likely to want to use one than the other. A frontline worker is using a ruggedized device, and the way we define workspace and the way identity plays a role is going to vary because it's more locked down. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a lot more flexibility and certain deployment use cases. For a knowledge worker, right? You might be using a FIDO2 to log into a desktop, but on the ruggedized use case, you might need a totally different authentication experience because it's a shared device. Now, when we think about the workspace, we have a lot of services that we deliver. So these are some of the apps that come with our end user experience. And today we're going to talk mostly about Hub, which is our core anchor app for trust and access. And we're going to talk about Campus a little bit too. And you saw both were represented in that video. There are, of course, lots of other apps that can come into play, whether it's Office or any internal application that our customers develop. Now, switching gears to Hub, right? So just a quick primer on what Hub's all about. This is the one app. So when you think about traditional UEM, you are generally managing devices. And to do that, you would install Hub on virtually every device. That's generally the case for our customers. So you have this opportunity with Hub to enable not just management, but a variety of use cases. And it could be as simple as conditional access and single sign-on, or it could be something more advanced, such as approval flows. This is available on all platforms today, so not just mobile devices, iOS and Android. It's on the web. It's also on Mac and Windows. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's a bunch of different use cases that you can enable with Hub. And back to the do I have to use it all? What's a workspace mean to me? It can depend. And there's really three sort of framework services you can enable within the context of Hub. Each is actually underpinned by access. So if you want to use Hub as a traditional management agent and secure a device, you can use access to do that. It supports conditional access, right? Step up flows, or determining what level of authentication is required to enroll a device. Employee engagement, that's what we call hub services. These provide you onboarding, unified catalogs. It even has built-in, tunneling as well as browsing if you want to do what we call an encapsulated use case. That, of course, leverages access and potentially a third-party IDP to do federation, directory service integration. And then, of course, there's authentication. And you're not required to use, of course, the native authentication components in Access. You can certainly use them if you want. There's a built-in MFA. There's digital badging. That was the notion in that video, if you think about when you had touchless IT. Today, Hub can actually, with BLE or NFC, unlock doors on your campus. And that's our passport feature. And we're extending that over time to unlock a variety of resources so that ultimately Hub becomes your digital and physical workspace key. And in doing all of this, Access, of course, is providing access to the identity providers, which can be built in, as I said earlier, or they can be third-party IDPs. Now I'm going to switch gears and sort of get a little bit more tangible in terms of when we say, okay, what are the key features of a hub and what do we enable in an anywhere workspace? I'm just going to highlight a few. There's so many use cases, but the first one, if you think about all of those frontline worker use cases, we see a lot of customers who want to use the anywhere workspace for notifications to employees. Believe it or not every employee in an organization has access to email. So in many cases, especially if email is down, which it is from time to time, you need a notification to cut above the noise and get right to users. And we see a lot of our customers doing this for high priority notifications. This is an example here of a fire alarm. I don't know if that's happened, but certainly tornado warnings and traffic alerts that go out all the time to our customers. There's also taking a similar concept and making it tangible for an IT worker or a knowledge worker. So if you think about in Hub having approvals, so imagine getting notifications, you have your notification view for various third-party applications, ServiceNow, Salesforce, etc. you can inline handle approvals or, of course, deny requests. And that can be all sorts of different use cases. And the idea here is to make things convenient for your anywhere worker. You can also use the same concepts. We have a chatbot built into Hub in the Anywhere workspace. You can interact with it to add a new device. You could interact with it to even request new hardware. And so here's an example using integration on the back end with ServiceNow for you to ask for support and walk through an order. And so this is all about self-service, which is a very important emerging theme in the Anywhere workspace for our customers. Lastly, I touched on this a little bit. There's a Builtin MFA Hub. Now, it is a free solution out of box. You might ask, well, why would I use this? Not another third party. Many of our customers do use point solutions. The use case here we see most of our customers looking at is because it's built into Hub, it's one less thing for your frontline worker to remember. We have a lot of studies telling us that adding every additional enterprise app onto a device adds complexity for employees. So they really appreciate built-in use cases. And that's really what this solves. It doesn't have to be used for every use case, but for certain use cases, it definitely makes sense. Finally, and I won't spend much time here, there is the notion of journeys and onboarding. And there's going to be a lot happening this year on this topic. But imagining you go from a candidate to an accepted employee to a day one employee, there is a journey that you can go on and access resources, maybe with a non-directory based account to see, hey, what do I need to do to finish my onboarding exercise, and then converting that to a directory account on day one, and then getting access to even more resources. So this is onboarding, which is a really interesting use case to have with Hub from what we call cradle to the grave for an employee lifecycle. Now, to make all of this possible, there's many integrations into Hub. These all, when you think about third parties, have to be underpinned with access. And this provides the federation to these different services. And then lastly, I just want to touch on campus. So you saw that predominantly featured in the video. This is something where we have both access working with campus and Hub to provide a very powerful experience to allow end users to essentially have temporary access to office facilities. This is something that's in beta now and will be something all our customers can take advantage of, especially as we start to get back to partial attendance in the office. You'll be using Hub with campus together with access for the sort of core pillars of your Anywhere workspace as an end user. Okay, so we're going to switch gears now. So Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about some of the deeper integrations between Okta and VMware.
Excellent. Thanks, Greg. So, this is probably my third Octane, and, we've always come up here and we've talked about the integrations we've had with Okta, specifically around device trust. Now, we've had, traditionally one method of device trust that we've always talked about. And, that is the SAML-based device trust. It is our original device trust. It is a fully supported solution that works across your Android and your iOS devices. And, this is something that's really good because it provides a fantastic user experience. It provides a great user experience. But more importantly, it ties directly into the device trust framework that Okta has. Now, this is something that we've had for a while now. I think it's going back, almost 2 years where we've had this solution, and it's performed really well. There's one gap that, or two gaps that we've seen out there, and that was we wanted support for Windows and Mac. And that was something that is, a lot of our customers have come to us and said, the solution's great. It works fantastic on iOS and Android. We need something for Windows and Mac. So essentially what we released recently is something called FactorBased Device Trust. Now, FactorBased Device Trust works a little bit different. It's fully supported across, all the 4 platforms across iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac. In addition to that, one of the great things that it does is it ties into our device compliance framework. It ties into our login risk scores in Carbon Black. And it also ties into the ability to add on the intelligent hub capabilities for the MFA. So this is something we released a couple months ago, and it gives you that full flexibility of adopting to all the 4 platforms and adding in that device compliance capability. Now, in the previous device trust, essentially what we provided Okta was a customized SAML response that ultimately told Okta whether or not that device was managed or not. Now, what FactorBased device trust does, it's a little bit different, and it works based on the MFA framework that is built into Okta. And what that allows us to do is to tie into the Okta app sign-up policies, and it ties into their MFA framework, where essentially when I access an application, regardless of how that application is launched, it will present the user with an MFA prompt. And that MFA prompt is essentially going to send you to Workspace One, where we will perform our mobile single sign-on. And most importantly, it allows you to put in a device compliance policy. Now, that device compliance policy is very important because device compliance, ultimately will give you a deeper insight into what is going on in that device. Whether or not that device is encrypted or not, whether or not there's a passcode complexity, is the device jailbroken? And one of the real important things here comes down to patch levels too. Have you installed the latest Windows 10 security patch? Are you behind on your Android patches? Is this something that we should take into account when you're accessing your CRM application or your Office 365? That we should ensure that your device is fully compliant and meets the latest version and all the security patches that are required that defines that it is compliant. It also ties into other factors like bringing in Carbon Black, bringing in a login risk score. So all these factors come together and tie into a device compliance and risk score that is ultimately determined before we present that response back to Okta. And this is something that will tie on and provide, ultimately seamless user experience and send the user a more secure and optimal method. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the flow here. And in this case, what I'm doing here is we're logging into the Okta portal. Now, by logging into the Okta portal, I'm going to click on my application. Now, once I do this, I'm prompted for that MFA prompt. And I click on that prompt, and what will happen here is that it will send me over to Workspace One. We will do our device compliance check. We'll validate the device and everything is good. We'll send that response to Okta, and ultimately I will get put into my target application that I was requesting. Now, what I showed you there was the browser flow and logging into the Okta portal. What I'm going to show you next, in essence, is a similar flow. But in this flow, what we're going to be doing is starting at the target application. So in that target application, I go in, I click on Salesforce. Salesforce will redirect me to Okta. Okta is going to present me that MFA prompt. It's going to send me to Workspace One. Now, when I get to Workspace One, yes, it's doing the device compliance check, but here's the option of adding in that MFA from your managed and compliant device that's running the Workspace One Intelligent Hub. I do my biometrics, I do my approval, and then that sends you right back to Okta. That ensures that, yes, you are operating from a fully compliant device, and we send that back to Okta, and then Okta can add on their identity threat analytics and all the threat detection that Okta has to tie into this ultimately log-on user experience. Now, switching gears a little bit, we talked about this last year at Octane, and that was our SCIM integration. Last year, between Okta and us, we released an Okta Universal Directory integration that allows for Okta to provision and manage identities within Workspace One. Now, Okta has full support to create users, update users, deactivate users, creating groups, adding users, removing users from groups. All that capability is built into the platform. And then that allows Workspace One to be able to handle whatever identity creation is required across all the various different components, whether it's Workspace One UEM, or whatnot. And that allows us to have that fully managed capability and leverage Okta for the source of truth for identities. And that essentially will be used that whenever I go and manage a device, or sorry, whenever I want to enroll a device, that will use Okta for that authentication. And then you can use that. Okta can form the authentication, send that request back, and we can fully authenticate and enroll that device. And all that is leveraging Okta Universal Directory as that source of truth for your Workspace One identities. Now, ultimately, with the Okta and VMware partnership, there's a lot there's a lot of value in here, and our customers have come to us and really encouraged us, to work together, and that's what we've continued to do, and we're continuing to do with Okta as we move from what we have today to moving to the next OIE platform. We're continuing to work with Okta. With VMware, we bring in that device compliance, that device trust capabilities, that zero trust platform. And Okta brings in that complete catalog of application, the universal directory, the provisioning, the MFA, their API gateway, their threat analytics. There's a variety of different factors that when we bring the two together, we continue to complement each other when it comes down to delivering that anywhere workspace. Okay, so I think now I'd like to bring in both Greg and Rusty into the conversation. And Greg, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So we've obviously covered a lot of ground here today. So Rusty, maybe what we can do is just start by learning a little bit more about DoorDash for those who who don't know who DoorDash is. So maybe you could tell us just top down. What does DoorDash do? How many employees? And what in general does the role of IT play for DoorDash?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. So basically, DoorDash is a last mile logistics platform. We're best known for restaurant food delivery, but we have a bunch of other different products and services as well on top of that. Our Drive white label platform, where merchants can deliver items that have been ordered through their channels, our DashPass subscription service, and our DashMart convenience are all additional areas. We've got a lot of different areas. We operate today in US, Canada, and Australia, and we've got about 4,000 employees globally. Some of our big areas, we've got support, sales, operations, engineering, for example. And yeah, there's a lot going on.
Awesome. So it sounds like with the fact that you have different operational areas that you might be already going down the path of remote first employees. So is it fair to assume you have a central team in IT that's taking care of the different regions at DoorDash and all of the various employees, or do you have multiple teams that look after it?
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of our management, it's generally based in our Bay Area offices, but we do have other large offices. For example, we have a large office in Phoenix. We have IT staff there, but as you mentioned, we're kind of all across the U.S. and Canada and Australia now as well. And as part of that, we want to have folks that are close to our customers, our merchants, our dashers, our consumers, really understanding what's going on in those markets and able to respond to the things that are unique to those customers. So that kind of manifests in it as a mix of, there's some smaller offices, and there's also a lot of people that are just full-time remote. And we've baked that into our IT processes. We really focus on our laptops, our endpoints, and making sure that those are capable to operate wherever our employees are located.
Gotcha. So it sounds like in many ways, even before the pandemic, is it fair to say that DoorDash was a remote first company?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And kind of regardless, of course, in our current environment, we're all working remotely as well. And as with many organizations, there's conversations of like what does the world look like going forward, and how do we make sure we're facilitating what our employees' needs are.
Yeah, makes sense. And then, so in that context, right? If you're primarily dealing with remote first employees, can you sort of share like what sort of the canonical workspace looks like today at DoorDash? So what's it mean, for instance, to make sure an employee gets their laptop and is productive?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're definitely uh, a SaaS-based organization. We're leveraging a lot of cloud solutions, of course, Okta and VMware Workspace One, and Workspace One in particular is a key component of that first experience for our employees. Is we use that on all of our endpoints in order to provision the devices on the spot as the employee gets the device. They're able to get set up right away with the correct software and the correct controls on their device.
Makes sense. And then in terms of when you onboard those devices, I mean, how far are you guys going down the path of zero trust? Is that part of your calculus for what is an anywhere workspace today, or is that an emerging conversation?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've been working on, and there's a lot of capabilities we have today, and we're always increasing those capabilities. And this is one of those areas where it's clear that there's a lot of opportunities in the right now to bring that to fruition.
Fair enough. So you're both, of course, a Workspace One customer as well as an Okta customer. Fair to say you're starting to bring those two technologies together to create that best of breed workspace. So maybe Steve, I could switch it over to you if you want to sort of ask
Yeah,
specifics questions
sure.
about the integration, and then we'll kind of bounce it around from there.
Okay, perfect. So, Rusty, now obviously you're both an Okta customer, you're a VMware customer. Can you talk a little bit about how you're using the two platforms? I know you mentioned a little bit about how you're using Workspace One, but if you can talk a little bit about how you're using both Okta and VMware.
Yeah. So basically, we work really hard to make sure that all of our applications are integrated with Okta single sign-on, and that way we can have that as our initial point of entry for access. But we use Workspace One on all of our endpoints across Mac, Windows, and Chromebooks as well, and we use that to make sure that we've got our devices in the correct configuration. And Yeah, that's really where we've been looking ahead, and how can we really tie all these together and make sure that we're getting the right combination of experience and controls.
Excellent. So, Rusty, I got originally involved with your team when you started looking at the device trust, about configuring and setting up device trust with Okta and VMware. Now, I recall you were looking at the original device trust. I talked earlier about how we have two modes of device trust. We have the original device trust, and we have the factor-based device trust, which is relatively new. Why? Can you talk about why the original device trust, did not work for you? And talk a little bit about factor-based device trust, because you guys played a big role in us releasing that solution. And I think for a period of time we internally were calling this the DoorDash solution for a while.
Yeah, sure. So basically, with the original solution, it was really focused on mobile devices, and we really wanted to bring this to our standard endpoints, our laptops, across all the different operating systems that we use, and that was really a key component for us. Another thing that was really important, that we had trouble finding in other solutions, was the ability to control at that app level. So a lot of the other solutions that we'd looked at were, you kind of get all or nothing. You have to lock down all of Okta as a unit, or nothing. And with this solution, we're able to control at the application level, so we can make sure that we're really focusing on putting controls in the right place and not affecting experience or productivity in areas where that's not necessary.
Okay. Now, what about device compliance? Being able to look into the facets, all facets of the device, more than just is the device managed. Did that play a role in it, or does that play a role in your decision making?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. So uh, given that we're already using Workspace One, we really want to leverage everything that we can out of making sure that the device is in the state that we expected it to be in. And so, with the flexibility of those device policies, that really gives us that flexibility to tie the state of the device back to that session. So, make sure that things are patched, make sure that we've got our correct software running, security software running on those endpoints, and so forth at the time of use.
So, Rusty, maybe what would be really good here is to sort of switch gears and talk about what's next in the evolution of workspace at DoorDash. So maybe you could share some thoughts about what you see coming next, either through Okta, VMware, or both, to make your organization successful.
Sure, yeah. There's definitely a lot of opportunities here. The one example, we're really invested in Okta. That's our directory solution. And we're really interested in the SCIM integration support between Okta and Workspace One for provisioning. That really helps us leverage that directory directly. And that's something we're really looking forward to. Another feature that's really interesting to us that's we're looking forward to in the Okta platform is the ability to group our application sign-on policies. So today we can specify an authentication policy on an individual application one at a time, but being able to apply the same policy across many applications at once, whether that's based on the risk of that application or other factors, will be really helpful. And then kind of going back to Workspace One as well with the device compliance piece, being able to do some risk scoring. So being able to do a black and white check of like, this is here or this is not here as a setting is really useful. But being able to look beyond that and see, well, based on all of the different factors of the device, what is actually the risk of that device today in terms of patching, in terms of the software that's running on it, and so forth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know that you have some endpoint security solutions that possibly can be integrated through the VMware Trust Network, for instance, to really solve some of these use cases in a really powerful way. So let me kind of look at it the other way, because those are definitely all well and good, and I think we'd agree that we see a big future for risk scoring. We really like the approach, of course, of the universal directory, and feel like from the Okta perspective, that's a really powerful linchpin of the anywhere workspace. But kind of looking at it the other way, like if you're an organization that maybe is not as far along, and maybe this is conversations you've had with some of your peers in the industry, like what kind of advice are you typically doling out to folks who are kind of struggling with, hey, how do I do what you do, or how do I get to an anywhere workspace state, right? Is there any kind of top advice you're giving folks these days?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I guess I would definitely say it's about the fundamentals, getting devices managed, making sure that you have management software on your devices that you can leverage for these features, even if you're not ready for them today. And really, the earlier that you can enable some of these things, the better. The further along you get, the more challenging it is to go back and catch up with all those end users out in the fleet that are in various different states, and now you have to have a much more hands-on solution in order to bring them into the fold with these technologies going forward. So, kind of the earlier you can get those foundations in place, the better.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I appreciate that feedback. Obviously, DoorDash is such a great organization, and you guys are really leading the charge in a real positive way to this new world of zero trust and anywhere workspaces. So appreciate that feedback, and it's really been a pleasure, working with you to date. With that being said, maybe what we should do is we should talk about follow-up items and learning more. So um, we are, and Steve, keep me honest here, but we do have a virtual booth, where you can come. We have live office hours where you can ask our team. So we have folks from the field organization and the engineering organization, myself. We're happy to talk more about workspaces, Okta integration with the Workspace One platform. You can see the hours here, and of course, we're happy to follow up as needed, and really looking forward to future conversations. So with that said, Steve, Rusty, any final comments on learning more or office hours, etc.?
No, absolutely. I'll be at the booth as Greg mentioned. Any questions on the original device trust or the factor-based device trust, or how you can get them, both to work, or anything like that, come see us in the booth. And again, the live virtual office hours are there as well, where we'll be there in video chat. So absolutely looking forward to it, and welcome any questions you have.
Awesome. Okay. So that being said, I think for Steve, Rusty, myself, we just want to say thanks, and really enjoyed the conversation, and looking forward to more in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks.